Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Umbrella Academy Season 3, Episode 6. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we kind of find out about what happened between Pogo and the Sparrow Academy, and it was how Reginald was raising them. In fact, he was actually going to send them on a mission that he knew a lot of them, if not all of them, would not return. And his job was to kind of protect them and train them, but Reginald pushed him and pushed him. And even Pogo says it himself, like, right, you trained them to not have any humanity. Well, no, you don't have any humanity. He's like, almost like, oh, I have no humanity. Almost like, yeah, of course I don't. I'm not human. But like I said, it's because they went back in time and changed things between Reginald and Grace that set him on a completely different course. Yes, he was an asshole, but there was still some smidgen of humanity in him. And with that going, the way he raised the sparrows is very completely different. Like, he went even harder in the paint. He kind of taught them to be very cutthroat and ruthless. And I don't think the Umbrellas were never that cutthroat and ruthless. To the point, like, Ben was practically in the process of killing Jamie during their training. It's like going that hard in the paint is kind of wild. But, yeah, Reginald being like, congratulations, good thing you did that, you know? And Ben kind of being hurt pride-wise, he just ends up storming off afterwards. Because I guess he felt like a failure because that was his to win. Because he was looking at his dad like, I guess that was back when he was potentially still #1. So he was like feeling hot shit, like really full of himself. Which once again, Luther was, but Luther didn't have that much of an assholishness to like back up him being #1, you know. But Pogo didn't want to deal with what Reginald was up to, and he ended up leaving. Which you can tell it did affect Reginald because this is an old friend of his. He's known Pogo since Pogo was a baby. Like, obviously, all that they did, like sending Pogo into space, him and Grace and all that back in the 60s. But it's like, right, this is the last person that could keep him in check, and he was allowed to run rampant. But he left something for the Sparrows before he left. And I was wondering what that was. We find out that's the medication that they've been giving Reginald. It wasn't their idea. It was actually Pogo's idea. Which begs the question, was that there in the original timeline? Because they were like, oh, why did we never have the idea to drug him? Because it wasn't originally their idea. It was Pogo's idea, just in case Reginald ever went too far. And that's so it goes like, oh, so maybe they weren't that bad for drugging Reginald, because if they didn't, this Reginald in particular would have gone even further off the deep end, because it turns out this is all related to his plan. We've heard the name multiple times, Oblivion. We heard it from Old Man 5, and we also heard it from Klaus, heard it from their dad when he was asleep. So it seems like maybe like the plan, either this is part of the original plan, or, you know, maybe doing all he did, Umbrella Academy or Sparrow Academy, doing all that was the setting stage for Oblivion. Who knows? But apparently there's also potentially some magic involved, which even Five was like, wow. He always took his dad as like the science guy. He's like, yeah, I kind of respected him for that. So for him, it's like, yeah, hearing that his dad might have been more interested in like the more mystical side of things is kind of interesting. He definitely doesn't seem like the type who would be open to like magic and stuff. He would be someone that's all about, he does strike at you as the type of person who is all about the facts and stuff. Five is talking to Pogo about all this, but it's like, yeah, now that he's off the medication, which even Five's like, ironically, my druggy brother got him sober. And now it's like, well, now they have to be ready for Reginald because his plans are going to be in action now because of that. And Five's like, go ahead and give me the tattoo. It's like, right, there's no point in trying to fight time and fate, because it's just going to have its way with you regardless. So it's like, right, we might as well go with the flow of things. I know I'm going to eventually get the tattoo because of the older me, so I might as well go ahead and get it now. Which is so interesting because, like, prior to going to, well, he didn't go specifically looking for Pogo, but found Pogo. But last episode, Klaus had the conversation with him about fighting fate, and it's just kind of like, nah, just might as well kind of go with the flow of it, because I guess, like, the harder you try to steer away from fate, the closer you end up kind of ramming right into it, because it's like doing all that they did I mean, things played out a little differently, but the apocalypse still came. There was just no stopping it in 2019. And, I mean, they were able to avert the apocalypse in 63, but I guess it's like, right, another apocalypse was set in motion during that time period, the whole Harlan thing. So it was just a stay of execution, I guess. And now it's on a much larger scale than it was before. So just kind of interesting things to think about. Then there's the whole Allison, Harlan, and Victor situation, which I thought was interesting because Harlan's like, right, I'm listening to the vibrations because everything and everyone has different vibrations. And Allison's like, oh, what do my vibrations sound like? And he's like, wrong. And she's like, well, aren't you a great conversationalist? But it's because he's sensing that something is off about Alicia. I mean, I'm not about to say Alicia. Allison, she's not the same person. Like something's not quite right there. So Victor does and Harlan try to do their thing. Because I'd said it before that Victor has better control over his abilities. But to be fair, Harlan's had his a lot longer than Victor has. Because it's only been probably less than... No, because because Victor went part of that month without his memories in season 2 without using his powers. So in totality, Victor's only been aware of his powers for probably maybe a couple days at best. If you pick up like Victor fully awakening his powers in season 1 and then kind of losing control and then kind of using them a bit more in season 2, like all that in totality time frame wise is like maybe a couple days. So plus he's never had anyone really training him to use his powers because his powers were locked away for most of his life. So of course he wouldn't have because Harlan is just by experience. Like Harlan couldn't control his powers, but he sat with them for a lot longer. He's had them for decades, whereas Victor hasn't. So that is kind of an interesting thing that like Victor can't really understand what Harlan's saying. I guess it's like it was like Harlan's way of processing it, referencing his Marigold. What he kind of referred to as the power inside of himself, that he wanted to do good with it. And then basically he wants Victor to listen not with his ears, but with his Marigold, with the power within, kind of listen to that. Hear the sounds that you normally won't be able to hear, like the vibrations like he can with like everyone else. And it takes a little while because Allison stops it the first time, which something interesting did happen because Allison tried to use her rumor power, but it didn't penetrate the orb around Harlan. But the moment she got on the inside and she just said stop, she didn't even say rumor says. She kind of went full blown like Black Canary there and stopped Harlan. She was like, what the hell was that? And I'm like, okay, so are we setting up that Victor might be a booster going forward for every superpowered person? Like maybe that's why Victor's power is so powerful and so destructive, because it can also act, well, at least with Harlan, because, well, it might not be the case, because their powers resonate on like a vibrational level, and Allison's powers are her voice, and, you know, that's a vibration in itself, so maybe that's why specifically her powers got amplified, but maybe the same things, I don't know. Like I said, I immediately thought other people's powers could get amplified, now, because I'd assume that's just an extension of what Victor can do. It just represented itself in a different way with Harlan, but they're kind of mirror. The powers are the same power, just like it's just manifested differently in Harlan. So my question then becomes like, is that, like I said, just an amplification of vibrational powers like Allison's, or could Victor boost all of his siblings' abilities? That is going to be the really interesting question going forward. To see like the implications of that. But poor Allison, once again, it's kind of in a very, very bad spot because Victor's kind of handling stuff alone and isn't opening up. And he's scared to tell everyone the truth because he doesn't know how they'll react, especially Allison, because Victor knows Allison is not in the greatest headspace either to learn about what Harlan did. I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but it's like, yeah, played out exactly like I thought it would, for the exact reasons. But when I keep saying Alicia, when Allison was on her own, she saw Ray, and she's like, no, you're just in your head, because she found out, like, yeah, just like Victor found out about Sissy dying in '89, Allison looked it up, and it turns out Ray died 9 years ago at the age of 82. And he was like, "Did I live a good life?" And she's like, "Not the life that you deserve," because it was still during the 60s and stuff, so he still had to keep up that fight and the rough and hardships that came along with it. So, because for her, she's like, "What if because now it's not only like not having Claire or Ray, it's almost like because Ray is dead, and that feels like so long ago. That was the 60s. It was just a few days ago, but that time frame wise, that was so long ago. It's almost like you don't exist, and now Claire literally doesn't exist. And it's like, did you ever really exist? And it's like, we did exist. As long as you are alive, we will survive here in your head, in your memories, but also in your heart. So you have to do your best to survive what's coming." It's even sadder too because they were at a playground like with swing sets and stuff. And she's even saying, like, right, if Claire met you, she really would have loved you. And how she never went there as a child herself, because obviously Reginald was like, oh, this is juvenile, but this is something she took Claire to when, so just cutting those wounds deeper and deeper. However, the issue is the moment Harlan was like, "I know why you don't like me." I was like, "Don't say it, Harlan, don't say it." He's like, "Oh, I thought Victor would have told you." It's like, "What? About the mothers?" And it's like, wait. Once again, it's not even about you killed our moms, which, yes, that's the apocalypse thing, but it's more so like, you're the reason my daughter doesn't exist. It's your fault. He's like, yeah, but I'm sorry. Once again, the cycle of things, because the thing is, Allison is so pissed at Harlan, because the difference is, because I was about to say, well, your brother set off the apocalypse that kind of OG killed your daughter in the first place, but you're also willing to, because you understood Victor's circumstances. You knew what he was coming from, that he was losing control, that you didn't blame him for losing your voice and what had happened to you. But Harlan isn't the same. Harlan's someone else. Plus, you're in a very different mindset than you were then. So you're not in the forgiving mood. So what does Allison end up doing? She ends up selling Harlan out to the Sparrows. But it's not like he has his powers anymore either. So, but she doesn't care, because she's like, yeah, this is done. And just like because she also like, she could have easily killed him herself, but it's like, right, they need him in this way. I protect the rest of my siblings, but also it's like this way, whatever he gets, you believe he deserves, which is sad because now two people are rolling deep with the Sparrows. I guess it's like making up for the fact is that, funny enough, them losing Jamie and Alfonso, they've got two different people. They've got Allison, which I guess she's choosing their side because it's also screwed them. Like, I don't know if she's going to be too forgiving of Victor for keeping this secret. So there's that element to it. But then they also had the Luther thing, which even Luther's like, right, did I ever have any, like, the only thing connecting me and my siblings is childhood trauma, and that's not enough to kind of be the foundation of a family, which Sloane understood as well. So when Ben offers him an opportunity to join the ranks, in particular taking Marcus's number, which kind of feels a little weird, it's like, right, you're replacing an alternate timeline brother with your dead brother. But, Luther had said that, like, let him know, like, right, after you died in our timeline, our family just wasn't the same. We kind of fell apart. But, like, obviously the other you was caring and kind and was a good person. Not as much, but Luther was like, I still believe that Ben is somewhere inside of you. But when Allison shows up, because you had that look on Luther's face, almost like he has this, like, I guess, well, this is their first time seeing each other since the whole her rumoring him. But also, I think she's almost like, here you are, I guess, here you are, once again, you're sleeping with the enemy. Now you've fully chosen the enemy side, but she's doing her own thing too, so I guess she's kind of like, well, aren't we a pair ending up here? But I think there's a part of Luther that's kind of like, maybe disappointed that Allison did what she did. I mean, because even Luther admitted he was kind of fighting not just with, it wasn't just with Victor, it's also with Allison. They're in an awkward spot right now, so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Other than that, we had Klaus meeting up with Reginald and talking to him about everything. everything that he went through. It's like, oh, I think it's the first time probably in a long time that his father has taken such an interest in him. But to be fair, this Reginald has no history with Klaus. At least the other Reginald was aware, once again, still knew that Klaus could do so much more if he, really tried. But this Reginald had no idea, so he's recording everything. He's like, oh, fascinating, fascinating. And the poor Klaus going in for a hug, he's like, oh, okay. And it's just like, oh, just so Reginald could stick an electrode on his back and electrocute him to test stuff out. So back to being an experiment. Yeah, a different timeline, same bullshit. Because they're so caught up in, the Sparrows are so caught up in their own BS, and, the world is, that's also the thing, too, kind of shows how much of an asshole you guys are, that, at least Ben, that he's so caught up in all this, while the world is literally burning around them. The fact is that they don't even realize that their dad's off their medication. It seemed like Jamie and Alfonso, the one scene we got, they were the ones who dished out the medication, so maybe Ben's just so caught up in wanting to be number one that he just completely, because other people typically handle that, maybe specifically Alfonso and Jamie, that he doesn't think about it, or thinks like, oh, that old man's not going to be able to do much. Unfortunately for them, they don't know about his combos was Klaus and all that. Other than that, we had the whole situation with Lila and Diego looking for Stan, because they're like, wait, you don't think he got Kogovlitz? And they're like, holy crap. So they go through that, which I thought that'd be stuff hidden in there. I didn't know it'd be a long hallway passageway, which they go through it and they end up on it's like a mirror. It's like, since, Superman and Lois, it's like a very bizarro world, because, right, in their room, they had the front of the buffalo. In this other room, it's the back of the buffalo. Things are backwards and different. Like, them rooms are like mirror images to each other. So you're like, is that like a mirror, like, not just like a different universe, but like a mirror, not just a different universe, but a mirror universe. So they go in and there's no one there, which I'm like, maybe it's kind of similar. Like, if you've seen The Magicians, there's like this mirror universe that people don't live in. It's other beings do. So part of me wonders if this is kind of that, because Diego and Lila eventually run into something there. Them running for their lives made me think of like Prince of Persia. What is it? The Warrior Within with the Dahaka. I believe that's the thing, or the thing that the monster that's chasing you like most of the game. It kind of reminded me of that. We didn't get a good look at it at all. We just saw that it had a I don't know what you call those weapons. It's kind of like Kohamuru's weapon. Kohameru from Inuyasha. It's kind of a weapon like that. Sango's got one like that too. No, it's just Kohameru, or like Joey Wheeler from Yu-Gi-Oh! Kunai Whip Chain. That. It seemed like it was that kind of weapon. Thought it was interesting. I was super surprised when Diego lost 2 fingers. Luckily, that's all it was. So they made it back. I was like, okay. And I was like, Stanley's going to be there, isn't he? And lo and behold, he went out to get a Slurpee and like a Slim Jim. Oh, and then he immediately gets dusted. You're like, fuck me. Jesus. Which is, I'm sure Diego and Lila have all kinds of complicated feelings, because Diego finds out, yeah, he's not your kid, and you're like, wait, what? Because I was wondering about that. You could fudge it. It's 12 years, and they're adults, so you could be like, I just thought it was interesting. I was like, oh, Lila looks super young to be having, like, a 12-year-old kid. To be fair, it's like, once again, it's like, now they say, like, she's in her late, because they're all in there, what? They're all basically 30, so she would basically have to be 42, so 42-ish, so she doesn't look it, so that's why I thought was kind of odd. But like I said, maybe that's just kind of like, well, it's 12 years difference, and from 30, I feel like that would be a noticeable enough difference, but it's like, I was like, maybe I'm thinking too much on it, so that's why I didn't think too hard on it. But it's like, I thought that age discrepancy didn't seem right. Like, it didn't seem like you had a 12-year-old kid. But it turns out because she didn't. That's someone else's kid that she borrowed. Because he was like, wait, did you kidnap someone's kid? And it's like, no, Trudy needed time away, and yeah, the kid, I like the little devil, so we're spending time together. Plus, it was a trial run in case, to see whether you are father material. And then, Diego kind of starts stuttering a little bit, and she's like, oh yeah, you'll find your words. And he's just so, it's like all the bullshit she put him through, and this was all that's not the good foundation of a relationship. That's actually super fucked up. But it was like a strenuous test, like, throwing Diego into the deep end. She's like, I came to care for this kid. I care for this kid more than you. It's like, but Diego still put his heart out there when it came to this kid, and it was just all a lie. In fact, Stanley was in on it. I mean, to be fair, it makes sense. He's old enough to know that's not his mom, so, he played into the con, too, which makes it worse. So that meant, a lot of the stuff he was doing, I mean, there's probably some, him, really legitimately falling and, feeling a connection with Diego probably was real, but, I mean, a lot of that, the mishaps and everything, was probably him playing it up. Also explains, why Lila was so intent on just, immediately dropping him off on Diego. I was like, that's kind of weird. If that was real. She's like, I've been running around with him for 12 years, but still, you'd have a deeper connection, because you had a very detached relationship, Once again, at least the handler at least pretended, but it seemed like you had a similar dynamic, but now it's like, it's kind of transactional to some extent, but also you cared about the kid. But then it's still, you could tell, even though it's like, that's not our kid, Diego still grew attached to him, and now it's like, oh wait, the kid just got dusted in front of us. It's like, I was thinking Stanley's probably going to be fine. It's like, once again, my thought was maybe the others hadn't been affected yet because they are the Umbrella, because they are all special, they all their abilities. So I assumed the same thing happened to Stanley, but it turns out, Stanley doesn't have any powers, because once again, not their kid. So that was interesting revolution to have a sad result like that. So now everyone's going to have extra motivation to hate Harlan whenever the truth does eventually come out, because Victor's probably going to run into because the only ones at the hotel now are Lila and Diego, and they're not going to be too happy about that, knowing Harlan's responsible for that. 5 will come back, but Klaus is still at the house being experimented on. So there's at least 3 of their siblings in the house, because Allison and Luther are there, but neither one of them knows that Klaus is there too. So that's definitely going to be interesting. The lines in the sand are getting drawn, and I'm sure this is all part of Ben, because Ben wanted to turn the family against each other using that. I mean, to be fair, it's not like his family is a awesome team too. They're ready to kind of fall apart because Faye's kind of done with your BS. Sloan doesn't want to kind of get in mixed up in all of this as well. So, it's him being the driving force, and they're kind of dragged along with it. Now, Luther's kind of inadvertently a part of the team. So is Allison. I'm figuring she kind of chose sides, but we'll see how that plays out. I'm curious, is there going to be any... I know there's going to be a going back for Allison. I don't think it's she's going to have a redemption, but she's very lost right now. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us. Learning more about Reginald's Oblivion plan. I'm assuming because the way he was taking notes, it was in a very... it could just be his people's language or the notes he was taking, but it definitely seems like he's really, really interested in what Klaus can do, and maybe that might end up being maybe that's also why Reginald, in particular, took such an interest in Klaus, because of that. He always knew, even in the original timeline, that he was going to need Klaus's abilities if the time ever came for this Oblivion plan. So we'll have to wait and see how this all plays out going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good